No. You see,
And what kind of films?
let me tell you, Hollywood, the way it works in the subcontinent, from Hollywood it goes to Bollywood, which is in India, which has completely changed again. What was the Indian film industry in the 70s and the 80s, gradually in the 90s, and what it is now, is completely changed. So the content is completely different. And it has an impact on the society. If anyone is telling me that this does not have an impact, you can just read, you can just see the divorce rates, you can see the sex crime. It has an effect both in India and Pakistan. So we then take the content from India, out of the films take it. And so basically what I was saying was that there must be an alternative. You must show an alternative, our own way of life. There is another way of life. Because modernity is not just permissiveness. It's not modernity. You know, if we are thinking that, you know, if you just have more and more permissive content on television or on films, this is modern. It's not modern.
I mean, again, like, I watch a lot of Hollywood films. I don't see anything that would inspire me to commit acts of...
But Jonathan, you live in a Western society.
I know.
You know, so you've grown up there. I'm talking about the impact it has on our society. We have seen the change here. You know, there's a massive change taking place. And every society must analyze itself. They must work out what are the impact it is having on different segments, and then take steps.
Do you think that what women wear has any effect? That's part of this temptation?
Well, you know, if a woman is wearing very few clothes, it will have an impact on the men, unless they're robots. I mean, it's common sense.
Yes, but is it really going to provoke acts of sexual violence?
It depends which society you live in. If in a society people haven't seen that sort of thing, it will have an impact on them. If you grow up in a society like you, maybe it won't on you. So, I'm not talking, Jonathan, you must understand, this is this problem we face. This cultural imperialism, whatever is in our culture, must be acceptable to everyone else. It's not. Every culture is different. And therefore, when you introduce things in a culture, it has different impact there.
But forgive me, like, when you were a cricket star, you were seen as a playboy, you know, there were photos of you with your shirts off and your bedroom. Like, it's a bit rich.
Jonathan, this is not about me. It's about my
messenger. Like, don't you feel like it's a bit rich for you to say?
Jonathan, listen, it's about my society. My priority is how my society behaves, what reactions are caused in my society. So when I see sex crime going through the roof, it's not just me. We bring people, sit down and we discuss it from different sectors of the society. We sit down, we discuss how we're going to tackle this. We have a problem. Now, are you going to tell me that I'm going to sit back and say, okay, we have this rising sex crime, but because of Australia, it doesn't have any impact, so we should do nothing about it. It is having an impact in my society. We have to do something about it. It doesn't mean what Imran did 40 years or 50 years ago, so it's hypocrisy. This is absolute lunacy what you're talking about. It's absolute nonsense. We have a responsibility. I, as a Prime Minister, have a responsibility. When a sex crime takes place, when a child is abused, he's traumatized for life. We have to do something about it.
One thing that is striking to me coming here is in America we have about 100 million more people than you, not so much more. 600,000 Americans have died of COVID. Your country, as I understand, something like 20,000, 25,000. You've done objectively vastly better than the United States with COVID. Why?
Well, first, you know, as someone who believes in God, you know, we are very thankful because there's so much you can do, and then there's something which is the twilight zone, which is beyond you. So you can only try your best. So what happened? When we saw these people ending up in hospitals, COVID raging through Europe, Spain and Italy were the first two countries where you saw hospitals full. There was a big temptation in Pakistan by all other politicians, leaders, opposition, that we should clamp down, we should total lockdown like it was happening actually. And so, you know, even though I kept asking what will happen to our poor people who are daily wages, 70%, 75% of our workers are in the informal economy. Daily wages, weekly wages. So, but, and watching what was happening in Europe, there was a clampdown, which had smart lockdowns. We then had...
What's a smart lockdown?
So we had this control and command center where we accumulated daily all data coming from Pakistan. So we got the Pakistan Army involved, all the provinces involved. We would get daily data. We had our doctors sitting there, infectious disease specialists, and they were monitoring the whole thing. And what we did was we would have these hot spots where there was, and we would try and lock them down. But we did not lock down everyone. And that's why we saved our economy from, we would have been destroyed. We already were suffering. Pakistan already had a dire economic situation. Had we locked down, our economy would have just gone belly up. So we saved the economy, and at the same time, because you cannot lock up hungry people, our lockdowns were more effective. India, on the other hand, their Prime Minister gave a 4-hour notice and just imposed a curfew on it. So there were these people, millions of people walking on the roads, clusters, and he did not think what would happen to the poor people. You can't, people, 6, 7 people living in one room, how do you lock them down? And then if you do not provide them food, how long can you keep them inside? So therefore, our balanced approach actually saved us. So Pakistan actually managed to control it too. Secondly, we saved our economy and we came out of it better than other countries. Having said that, we still haven't come out of it completely because until we vaccinate everyone.
What's your dream for Pakistan?
I repeat, the dream is to raise people out of poverty. That's my biggest, which is why I think what China has done is brilliant, and we've studied all the steps they took for people to get out of poverty. So that's number one. You know, there's nothing worse than poverty in society. Everything else is secondary. And then is rule of law. And rule of law is very important because, in my opinion, the countries remain poor because they don't have rule of law. There's a very interesting report by the Secretary General, UN Secretary General's fact-eye panel, and this investigated what is happening, the flight of capital from developing world every year. From these poor countries, $1 trillion moved towards Western societies and towards Western capitals and offshore accounts. So this is, and it happens because there's no rule of law, because the powerful can use the system and siphon off this money.
Your predecessor did that.
Both the two families that basically ruled Pakistan for 30 years. I mean, they have just taken billions of dollars out of Pakistan. So when this huge amount of money leaves the country, that money could be spent on human development, reducing poverty, on infrastructure, all the ways that you can create wealth. So not only do you get impoverished because that money is taken away, but then they buy dollars to take it out. So it impacts your currency. And when it impacts your currency, when your currency devalues, it raises poverty because it causes inflation. So two things. One is steps taken to reduce poverty, make Pakistan a welfare state, and secondly, to bring the powerful under the rule of law.
I want to ask you about one more subject, which is climate change. Pakistan suffers from climate change in a way that I think people in America couldn't begin to understand. Like, you are in the cauldron, almost the ground zero of climate change. Help an American watching this, there's going to be a lot of Americans watching this, help them understand what the stakes are for this issue and what needs to change in your life.
Well, for Pakistan, you see, for the Americans to understand why it is critical for us that the world moves to fight climate change, 80% of all the water in our rivers come from our glaciers, which are in the mountains, the Himalayas, Karakoram, the mountain ranges. And if the temperature keeps rising at the rate it is, our glaciers are melting. I was talking to the president of Tajikistan, which is on the other side of the mountains. They said that 1,000 glaciers have melted in their mountains, which bring water to their rivers. So if these glaciers are melting at a fast rate and this temperature keeps rising, then we are facing hundreds and millions of people are going to face starvation. So not just Pakistan, I mean India will face the same thing because their Ganges plain is again hundreds of millions of people and they depend on the water from the Himalayas too. So this is the big problem. But Pakistan's contribution to climate, global warming is minuscule. Our emissions are less than 1%. 1 billion from 2013 to 18. Now we planted already another billion, and now we're going for 9 billion more. So the idea is that we should do our best to fight climate change.